I couldn't help but notice that you've clicked on and are presently listening to an episode of the Paranormal Patio podcast. Thanks a lot. I appreciate your support. And if you want to continue to support us, the best thing you can do is share our episodes on social media. That's right. You can tag us in everything. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can also find us on paranormalpatio.com, where you'll find articles, links to information from our past guests, as well as, every episode as it comes out. Also, head on over to Patreon. Patreon.com/BeyondThePatio. You can get a monthly live stream, at least one. Sometimes we do more. Exclusive bonus content, early access to all of our episodes. And starting with Season 3, I've got to move Season 1 to the archives. So they'll be on Patreon as well, and you can listen to them there. Thanks again for your support. And hey, let's get into the episode. What kind of weird thing are we talking about today? This is the first ever Patreon intro because if you sign up on Patreon, you can become basically a host for an episode of the Paranormal Patio. And tonight, we've got one of our patrons, actually one of the first patrons, Michael, is here, and he's hosting us in his patio, and it's fantastic. Michael, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today, Jason?
Pretty good, because this episode is going to go down in history as one of my favorite episodes. It is the most bizarre Bigfoot story I've ever heard in my entire life. And you've heard the story firsthand, and what do you think about it?
I have heard it, and then let me tell you guys, it is one of the most bizarre and most outrageous yet awesome stories you will ever hear on this podcast. I promise you.
Ever. It's so good. I am pumped to put it out. It's just one of those things. It's like one of those moments in time where you're sitting around with a group of friends, and somebody's like, oh, I got a Bigfoot story to tell you. And it unfolds just beautifully.
Yeah, you just buckle your seatbelt and get ready for the ride.
Yeah,
I'll
absolutely.
tell you that.
Absolutely. It's so good, and I'm happy to present it. And I'm happy to present it from your patio, man. Thanks so much for being a patron, and thanks so much for hosting this.
And I'm so happy to be here, man. It's really an honor, honestly. This podcast is one of the best I've listened to so far. I really don't listen to a lot of podcasts, but I'll tell you right now, this is my favorite so far.
Yes! I love it. I'm happy to hear that, man. Thank you so much. So, without further ado, if it's okay with Michael, we'll proceed with the episode and Keith and his wonderful Bigfoot story. It just blows my mind.
Buckle up, people.
You're listening to the Paranormal Patio Podcast.
Paranormal Patio. As always, I'm Jason, joined tonight with a good friend of mine, Keith, and we're going to leave his last name redacted for obvious reasons that you're about to find out. But we have some awesome stories for you, including probably the absolute best Bigfoot story I've ever heard in my entire life. And I can't wait to get into this and just to hear the stories again. It's going to be so much fun. Keith, welcome to the patio, buddy.
Hi, Jason. Okay, where do you want me to start? Early on as a kid?
Yeah, take it from the top. The floor is yours.
First time it really started getting into paranormal and stuff like that, and thinking about it was everybody as a kid, Fire in the Sky, when the movie came out. The movie and the book. There's a festival that it's going on, and that's the first story I'm going to start with you today.
Awesome.
It was probably late 90s. I was probably 11 or 12. And at the end of the festival every year, there's fireworks. It's in the middle of summer, so it's after 4th of July. And everybody's just sitting out there on blankets and everything, and there's a bright star in that sky, like brighter than anything. And it just gets brighter and brighter and just sits there. And I don't know, probably about 10 minutes. And this is after probably 2 months after we'd seen Fire in the Sky, so all the kids were like, oh, it's a UFO, it's a UFO. Old ladies around, quit saying that, you're going to get everybody scared, there's no such thing as UFOs,
right.
It's not real. And then it disappeared. Slowly dimmed out from the orange. And then about probably 3 minutes later, it was probably 5 feet over. So far away, it looked like 5 feet.
Right, yeah.
And came back to the same brightness it was before. And it was probably twice as bright as any star in the sky.
Wow.
And then faded out again. Nothing. Fireworks went off. And that was it of it. That was the first story.
And this is, I mean, whenever we were kids, it was before drones were a thing. It wouldn't have been anything like that.
Technology wasn't near advanced.
Yeah.
Anything like that.
Yeah. So what are we talking, like 30 years ago?
More like 26.
Yeah. So, yeah, definitely not where we are now with...
So what do it... mid-90s.
Yeah.
Mid to late 90s.
All right, yeah. So that's really what started you, like, being into this stuff, right?
Anything I'd seen that I couldn't explain.
I gotcha. So you were like me, though, as a kid, like... We're like the Ghostbusters generation.
Yes.
You know,
yeah, Ghostbusters 1 and 2, you had that in the VHS for hours.
And the cartoon on Saturdays, man, that's my, like, starting point, I think. I'm pretty sure. And then, like you said, Fire in the Sky, I watched that way too young, just like you did.
I watched a lot of movies way too young.
Oh, yeah. But it was a different time, you know.
Old satellite dish.
Well, I had free pass at B&C Video.
Yeah.
Which doesn't exist anymore.
No.
But as long as it didn't have too much nudity or sex in it, I could get whatever I wanted.
Yeah.
So I watched a bunch of scary movies, you know, from the late 80s, early 90s.
There was an old hippie dude in town that rented us anything we wanted.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
He didn't care. So we watched Caligula and stuff like that.
Wow.
Really,
yeah. So you see this bright light, and then it dims out, and it moves and comes back. And obviously you weren't the only one who saw it. You mentioned, you had your friends there. And
there was probably in the whole area at the time, I don't know, 100, 150 people.
Sure, that's what I'm guessing. What's the next thing that you remember in your life that was just bizarre and weird? As we're building up to this awesome story. I can't wait to get there.
Nothing really, because, I mean, I lived in town, and that's when video games hit then.
Oh, yeah.
After that, so it was teenage years with video games.
Yeah.
And then in the early 20s, when you turn 21, that's when it all started to get good. When you start doing things, going out, parties, camping, going on trips.
Sure.
Alcohol's involved.
Absolutely. Yeah, taking me back now, man.
And I was a naysayer. I made fun of people. This is when the show first came on Sci-Fi, and the goofballs were running around.
The Ghost Center show?
It was the original one. I can't remember. But it was, that ain't real, you know. Bigfoot isn't real. And, well... So how it starts is we went out camping on a camping trip down by our river here, and we'll just call it the Emberall River.
Yeah,
everybody knows it, here in Illinois.
Yeah, we actually, before we started recording, we took a trip out to the spot just to see it. So yeah, it's real fresh in my memory.
Yeah, we couldn't get back there, and they have it closed off, but now it used to be public area. Now
we're going to look into that.
Now they have no trespassing signs up, so there was no need of going in there and being that close to town.
No.
And it was the youngest guy in our group. He just turned 21, and this was a hot spring. Probably it was mid-June, and it was probably 95 at night still, 94.
Hot.
And there was probably 10 of us originally on the first night. We went out on a Thursday. We had drank, did everything, swam in the river, fished. We did it all. Right down our big, the sandbar, it goes all the way around.
Yeah.
It curves over, and there's more sandbar that way.
Sure.
Well, first night, nothing. Fine night, we drank, sat by the fire, was being loud. I mean, it's so close to the road, there's cars that go by all night long.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing first night. Second night, the girl I'm dating at the time, she was a little bit older than me. I had just turned 21 myself that March.
Mm-hmm.
And she was 25. She just got out of, I think, 6-7 year marriage, had 2 kids.
Yeah.
Well, second night is when we started hearing it. It was still just us that second night, but it was only like 4 of us that second night. Her kids at the time were at their father's house. And she was going to get him the next day, Sunday, so we decided, we'll just stay another night. And that night, all the beer's pretty much gone. We had what was left of the beer in the vodka that we were drinking the night before.
Man.
Yes. It was old Nikolai.
Yeah.
Back when you just were turning 21 and you drink anything.
Yep.
And we're just sitting there by the fire, and that's when we start hearing, like everybody, the high-pitched screams, the loudness. Nothing to it. It went on for probably an hour that night, and a few knocks. That's when it started. When we started hearing the knocks, and that's when because I was making fun of it that night. Oh, Bigfoot's gonna get you. You know what I mean? Sasquatch is gonna, everybody's laughing, and so we drank the rest of the alcohol that night. We actually were up pretty late on the Saturday, or well, that would have been a Friday night. We were up pretty late on the Friday night, probably 2 or 3 in the morning, because nothing after probably 11, because it all started the last nights at 11 o'clock. The next night we go to, and she's going over to pick up her children from her ex-husband's house that day, and her youngest son was probably 2.5 years old at the time, and it was hot, pretty hot that day. So while she was gone, a guy and his 2 kids showed up, and we were looking to camp, and we had the kids coming, so they were closely the same age. We're like, yeah, whatever, you can camp. We're not going to be rude about it. We'd already drank all the alcohol. All we're doing is fishing, having a good time now, and enjoying the weather. So I wouldn't say enjoying it, because it was pretty hot. It was in the 90s. And that night she got back and was like, who's this guy? I was like, he just wanted to camp with his kids. He was in town. Said he just got custody of his kids and was taking them on a camping trip. I didn't want to seem like a dick about it, you know?
Yeah.
But it all went south after he showed up. Like,
it's so weird.
Yes. Like, all went south then. Like, here we are, and I'm pretty good about preserving where I go. You take more than what you brought with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if there's someone else's trash and you have trash bags, pick it up. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter. I mean, you can complain about it all you want. Just pick up the trash.
Absolutely. Everybody needs to follow that advice.
He just goes back to the back of his van, whips out the chainsaw, starts it up, and starts cutting down a tree. I'm like, okay, so she just got back with her kids. She's like, okay, this crazy guy here now is just starting to cut down a tree. Because we were out of firewood. A lot of people camp here. So going out into the woods there, trying to pull up logs, someone's already done it.
Sure.
20 weekends in a row.
Yeah.
So he just starts cutting up this tree. So I was like, all right, I guess it'll give us enough wood to get through the night anyway. So he cut up the tree, finished. It's getting dark. This guy hasn't even got his tent up yet.
Yeah.
Starts putting his tent up. While he's putting up his tent, that's when we start hearing the knocks. I mean, loud knocks. Like something slamming logs off trees in the back. But it's a loud popping noise. So I don't know if they knew what trees make what noises and whatnot, because it was different. Loud pops. Not quite as a smash as a pop noise. Mm-hmm. And then we hear something, I don't know if it pushed a tree in the river or if it jumped in there, down around the corner, around the bend right there. But it was loud. It sounded like an elephant jumping in the water. And that's when everybody stopped. And just looked around, because we started hearing something on the other side of the river. And we kept flashing lights over there, seeing if we could see it.
Yeah.
Just joking, too, saying the same thing. Oh, Sasquatch is over there, it's going to get you. Making fun, telling the kids. I was starting to scare the kids, which that was the bad deal about it.
Yeah.
So I quit. And then we decided to turn in early that night, because we had extra people there. The guy was taking off, whatever. And she had her kids now there. And get into bed and pack up, leave early in the morning. About, I don't know, it was probably 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. Her son starts screaming. He's 2.5 years old. That's what babies do when they wake up.
Yeah.
When they're in a tent in the heat.
Yeah, 90 degrees still at night, probably.
And to take it this time, my mother lived down the road, less than a mile.
Sure.
I wake up. My friend I passed out. My friend had just went to the bathroom outside the tent. And I was yelling at him, dang, a fire hose out there. Didn't have nothing to drink tonight. You're pissing so much. He just laughed and went in the tent and went to bed. And I'd probably passed out, within a couple minutes afterwards. Woke up afterwards, because she went, I get back there, I skipped that part. Her son woke up, and they went up to the car, and she turned on the air conditioner with him.
Yeah.
Sat up there and slept. They came back down after my friend used the bathroom, and I got up and used the bathroom that time. Then, nothing, we just kept hearing the same noise. I'm laying there, that same howl, that whooping across from the river. I passed out probably 2:30 in the morning. Not even an hour later, the guy starts screaming at top lungs, because I wake up and the baby's crying again. I'm like, okay, why is this guy being a dick now? He comes in here, starts cutting trees down, just doing whatever he wants, and starts screaming at her, get that kid, take that kid somewhere, and just being an asshole about it.
Yeah.
Screaming at the top of his lungs, all like screaming.
Yeah.
And while she takes him back up, starts the car, gets in there with the air conditioner on again. I'm laying there because I can't sleep this time. Now it's probably an hour I'm laying there. I don't hear nothing. She's still up there. Turns off the car and the lights. She's still up there. He's probably sleeping. She probably fell asleep too.
Sure.
So we had a path off to where we camp, where everybody went and used the bathroom. And I go down there. I walk down there in the dark. Didn't even bother grabbing a flashlight. The fire's dead. I'm going to throw some logs on it when I come through. And I go back there and I take a piss. And I come back to the tent, and I crawl back in it. I hear something else out in the woods. I'm laying there half in and out of it, because I was half asleep when I walked back there to use the bathroom. And I hear something pissing like nothing you'll ever hear before. And I thought it was my friend, as I was talking to him before. God, you're so full, man.
Right.
And he has a unique laugh, my friend. So you knew it was him if he would have said something. But I mean... And it was long, loud and long, like a hose.
Yeah.
And I'm just laying there laughing. I'm just like, damn, man, what did you drink? Nothing. I'm like, okay. I say his name. I'm like, Aaron, you out there? He's like, no, I'm not here. I'm in the tent. I'm like, oh, okay. Pass back out. And this is still dark, and so I'm like not sleeping. Every half hour I'm up from something.
Yeah.
So finally 4:30 in the morning rolls around, because this was probably right after cell phones, so you still had the Nokias.
Yeah.
Okay, so I got to click on the green screen on the Nokia, and it says it was like 4:15 or something. Still dark. I gotta pee again. So I'm like, I got to get up every so often and pee every hour, it felt like. And the fire's completely dead at this time, so it's dark. So I just walk out to the side and pee this time. So I'm coming back around from my tent, and it's on the edge of the woods. And how the area is, there's the hill that goes down to the sandbar to the river. Mm-hmm. And I was coming back, I've been down to throw logs in the fire, and I've thrown a couple logs, and when it spark for what was left flew up, and that's when I seen it. And it was on the edge of the river. There was 4 pretty big oak trees there, and its head, and it was squatted down right there on the side of the tree looking at me, right in the eyes. I'm shaking my head, you know what I mean? Am I awake? You know what I mean?
Right.
And I just shoot up. I stand up. And when I turn to go towards the tent, because I don't know what to do right now. I'm not making any noise, nothing. When I go towards the tent, it comes around the tree on me and starts like 3 big stomps. Boom, boom, boom. And then when I look up it again, because I'm fidgeting with the zipper on the tent at the time, trying to get in it, it's going to save me anyway from a 7.5 foot creature running at me. And it stops. It's right when I look at it again in the eyes, like Boo from Mario. And so I get the zipper, and it gets stuck on that lip that it always gets stuck.
That little rain guard, man, every time.
So you get in there, and I couldn't even get it all the way down when I got in, so I zipped it just to where there was a little bit at the bottom. Yeah. I just shoot back to my sleeping bag and lay there.
What were you thinking? Like...
The adrenaline was pumping so hard. I mean, you're not thinking. Okay. Because it's something you've never seen. You after you're making fun of it, saying it's not real.
Yeah.
Hours beforehand.
Yeah.
And I just laying there. That's when it comes up to the tent door. Stomps right up to the tent door, bends down, and I'm in the back far part of the 6-man tent against the window. Rain guard's not on this time. Too hot for it. Mm-hmm. Sticks its hand in the bottom of the tent door, and I have big hands, you know this, Jason, and 3 times the size of mine. Wow. Half covered in hair, long fingernails, and I'm sitting there like, oh man, I just sharpened a hatchet like 2 or 3 days ago. I'm like, it's the only thing I have in here. I'm laying there in this sleeping bag with my head on the pillow, just every thought of what I could do without, if something does happen, it's a surprise. Usually someone's screaming at the, not many people are just going to go through the situation like this.
Yeah.
So I'm laying there like, okay, because I shoot up at that point in time. I have my hand on the hatchet, and it pulls its hand out of the tent. Comes around the other side of the tent where the window is, and squats down and starts staring right at me while I'm sitting up in the tent. So I'm just sitting there like this, looking at it straight in the eyes. It looks just like all the old footage, exactly. The one, what is it?
Patterson Gimlin?
Yes, exactly, but lighter fur color, reddish brown. And this is still going on, probably 10 minutes just staring at me. This time I'd laid back down like I didn't see it.
If I pretend it's not
there. I'm dreaming. This isn't happening, you know what I mean? Yeah. But his heart's just pumping. And then while I'm laying there, I just start bursting out crying.
Uncontrollably, I'm sure. Yeah.
Uncontrollably crying to myself with no noise though. Just
terror.
Yeah. And I'm wiping at my eyes. Like, what is going on? Like, it starts burning. I don't know if they had that. The musk was that strong, being that close. I had so much adrenaline from getting inside the tent that I didn't feel it at first. And then when I calmed down that it wasn't going to attack me through the tent and try to stomp me through the tent, I came to.
Yeah.
And that's when I realized that that's what was causing my eyes to water that bad and hurt.
Did you register the smell?
Yes, afterwards.
After?
Yes, right then when I was coming to, then that's when I got the smell too. And I'm like, okay, that's what this is. This is Sasquatch. So I think this is real. This ain't fake. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Was it that sort of like gorillas in the zoo, summertime, like BO type of smell, or was it a little different?
A skunk times 10.
Wow.
Times 10. Like if a skunk... Getting sprayed in the face from a skunk, but not getting sprayed in the face.
Yeah.
That's how bad it was. My eyes were just watering. So I finally just stripped my shirt off and start wiping my eyes. I'm laying on the ground. It's not going anywhere. Just staring at me. I'm laying there. I can't make it. It's like I had paralysis from fear paralysis.
Yeah.
I start telling it, go away under my breath. And then that's when it starts mimicking my mouth moving. I'm like, oh, this is great.
Oh, dude.
So after a little bit of a while, it just gets annoyed. Because I'm not doing nothing, I'm not doing that, and so it stands up at the time. And when it stands up, I'm like, man, I have all these thoughts going through my head still at this point in time. Is this a guy out here, mass murderer, coming in a gorilla suit? Is it this guy over here in this tent that showed up in a gorilla suit?
Right, the suspicious stranger, dude.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now he was just yelling and screaming hours ago when a kid wakes up in the night. So I'm laying there on this. I'm curled up pretty much, got my feet off the tent because it's right there pushing into the tent. That's when I stretch out. I'm like, I got to figure this one out. If I hit a shoe, it's a man. That's what I'm thinking. It's a guy. It's this dude, and I'm about to get out this tent and beat someone's ass.
Yeah.
Because then the fear went away. I know. You know what I mean? It's a man. It's another guy. It's a human. Well, I stretch out. When my big toe hits the biggest toe, probably twice, 2 to 3 sizes as mine, solid as a rock. Man. I bring back my feet in. I'm like, okay, this is not a human. This is Sasquatch, or Bigfoot. And then after that, I'm thinking I'm just there now. Like, okay, is it going to go away? Because this is probably 20 minutes of it just standing there staring at me. Finally, my girlfriend at the time turns the car lights on. Boom. And that's when it stands up and goes over to the side of the tent and stands there off on the edge of the woods right there. And I could see it still in the shadow. It's so big. The moon, it was pretty much full moon, so it had plenty of light for me to see it. Then the car goes off again. I'm laying there. I'm like, should I set up and look out this other window to see if it's still there on the tent, or should I just lay here, just forget about it? So I got ballsy. I was like, I'm going to look up. I've got to now. Because nothing happened to me. I was like, okay, this is crazy. Nothing happened to me. I was like, I got to see it without it looking at me. I set up and I look out the side window of the tent, down the path where we use the bathroom, where it's heading. As it stops, and it had to hear me move. Just, its sensory so much better than mine. It stops right there in the middle of that trail. And up from the bottom of where the river is comes a baby. Looks like an orangutan with half its hair. jumps just like an orangutan on its arm, grabs its hand, swings up on its shoulder.
Onto the bigger one's shoulder.
On the bigger one's shoulder, and inside of its hands, it had our bag of Doritos and a bag of hot dog buns.
That is so wild.
Outlandish.
Oh man.
And it's like it haunted me. I had dreams about it for probably 2 months, 3 months. Because the next morning I woke up and I'm like, we got to get out of here. I'm searching the area for footprints. I'm going down. I'm looking. I'm going all the way down there. Nothing. You could see imprints for where something was standing, but no footprints. And this is all sand and river, so with water around, it should have left something.
Yeah.
Within a few hours, because I was laying there, they're like, "You gonna get up? It's 11 o'clock in the morning." I'm like, I slept that long.
You wake up. Is the chainsaw dude still there?
No. Wake up. They said, I talked to where'd they go? I was like, they leave already? They weren't even here 12 hours. My friend goes, yeah. They packed up and left at 6 o'clock this morning. The little girl said there was a monster standing outside the tent.
So, did anybody else hear or see anything like from your group besides the chainsaw family?
A friend of mine that was in the other tent, when it walked off with the little one, he said, "What the hell was that?" And I was so stunned from it all, I didn't even say nothing. I just pretended I was sleeping.
Yeah.
He didn't do nothing. He was just like, "What the hell was that?" Because when it took off, you could hear it. Boom, boom, boom,
wow.
boom. Going, yeah, just tremors to the ground, because I'm on the ground on a sleeping bag.
That's nuts, man.
That's what made me a believer, and I stopped making fun of people about it.
Yeah.
Calling them liars and delusional.
Yeah. That's the most peculiar thing. Like, in all the Bigfoot stories I've heard, is the little one finding the bag of Doritos and the hot dog buns and snatching them from camp.
What they did was they lured me. They had to have. That's why I didn't do nothing. They were wanting to see what food we had. It had to have been. Because my mom lived a mile away down the road. And yeah.
And you've got some stories about that property, too, we'll get into in a little bit.
But yeah, we found the cooler on the sandbar the next day with it upside down, closed. Only thing that was left inside was cinnamon and apple Quaker oat cakes, rice cakes. So apparently they didn't like them. They want the Doritos though.
Yeah, man, I don't blame them. I don't blame them at all. So you think the big one was just like keeping you away from the little one?
So it could see what it could steal.
So kind of like teaching it to hunt, kind of,
yes,
sort of, but like
scavenge
from us.
Mm-hmm. Got to survive somehow.
That's bizarre.
And that hot, the river's low.
Yeah. I love that story so much. But we have a lot more to talk about. And we're also going to talk a little bit about some of the history of the area, sort of around our area.
Old Vincennes,
Indiana. We'll get into that in just a minute.
New France, back way before.
We just mentioned that, your mom owned some property just like within a mile of that spot.
Yes. So
you had some more stuff going out there.
I explained, I never really told this to anybody besides who was there, and I told you the one night, and I told you, it was far-fetched, outlandish.
Yeah.
That's why I really never told anybody.
Sure.
Well, my brother at that time, he had lived in a camper, a tornado, a strong straight line wind tornado south of there blew the roof off of it.
Yeah.
So my mom was moving into a bigger house in the town that's closest there. And we had just a fifth wheel camper out there, just so we could stay out there because we still had animals. We had 2 goats and the dogs out there because she didn't want them in the new house.
Yeah.
And I explained that story to my brother the last 2 weekends we went up north to see him. And that's when he starts to explain to me what happened to him out there in the camper, out there in the land.
Which is, again, within a mile of
the river. Yes. Yeah. Him and his girlfriend at the time, before they had their first child, were staying out there. She was going to school and a college in a couple towns over, and so it was close. They were staying out there. At the time, my mom was going back and forth to Indianapolis for cancer treatment. So someone had to be out there for the animals, and they were living out there in the camper. I tell him this story, and he explains to me that they had a whole blue tick hound out there with him. This dog was the most annoying, uncontrollable hound dog you could ever have. Ran everywhere, escaped anything you put it into. And they were out in the camper one night. He said that dog it freaks out insanely, like nothing he'd ever seen before. It busts through the door on the camper and takes off, and then he hears the loudest noise that from a dog he'd ever heard in his entire life, and he never seen the dog ever again after that. And this is an hour or a mile away from where I just explained. Well, he starts putting stuff out in the woods, because we feed the goats out there Doritos.
Not just Doritos, right?
Yeah.
Just Doritos?
Yeah, everything they need, but they love Doritos. That's how, because they get out. We had one male that he would get out of anything. He'd just get his horns under it, and he'd dig himself out. So we'd lure him back, because he'd run with the dogs when the dogs got out, too. It was the weirdest thing you'd see. Yeah, it's outlandish. We'd have 2 dogs and a goat at the river that I'd have to go get. And so we'd feed him Doritos to lure him back, because that's the only thing that you would lure him back in there. It was probably that winter, because going through treatment was costing my mom a lot of money, so she was getting ready to sell the property south of town. And so I'm out there now, staying. It was winter. It's close to winter. It was probably October, like I explained. It was October. Same camper. I'm out here following this. And this is when... So this would have been when Obama was getting elected, because I remember him running the story on CBS, because out there, old analog TV.
Yeah.
Little bitty one with a VCR, like out there in the camper.
Yeah.
I have my 2 dogs at the time. One's he's a mixed pound dog. I don't know what he is, and then a pit bull boxer. And the same thing. I wake up, ants in a snowstorm, static on the TV. It's probably 2 in the morning after this, and it's cold. It got cold that night, and that little heater in there, just wouldn't keep it warm. So it kept kicking off. So I'm up now because it's so cold. Dogs are out there barking. I'm trying to get them back in the camper. Door's wide open. I'm like, how do I keep busting through this door? Something's breaking the locks on everything out there. I'm laying there back on, because when they finally got them back in there, they go straight under the bed. The hide bed couch we had in there. So I'm just laying there finally, like, oh man, the TV won't come in. I'm laying out here in the middle of the night, cold. Nothing, no alcohol to keep me warm or nothing. I'm just out here in the country in the damn camper. That's when I'm laying there, and I start hearing something beating on the hatch up above. Just like pounding. Just a soft pound on it. Rattling it. Trying to get in that thing. Like, I'm laying there, I'm like, oh great. Because this was probably 2 years after the other story. 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
And, because Obama was 08?
Yeah.
Yep, so it would have been 2 years. Nothing. After that, nothing to ever calm down. I finally passed back out. Next morning, my brother shows up. Come pick me up, take me back into town. Because he knew it got cold that night. He was like, I better go see if he's all right out here. He goes to pull in the driveway, and there's a tree pushed down across the driveway. Yeah, I didn't hear it. I must have slept through hearing that. So maybe that's what the dogs had busted through the door again to get to, because they ran all over down there. Those dogs, you let them out for 10 minutes to run around, and they were gone.
Yeah.
In the woods somewhere, going through a field. I get back into town that day. This is wild. And this is when I run into the census guy. And it's 2008. I come out. My brother drops me off. I go walk up to the store to get a pack of smokes and something else. I was coming back, and then I was going around the corner to go back into town. We were going to a friend's wedding reception that night. And as I'm coming out my front door, after this night of me laying out here in the cold, a guy in a long brown trench coat with a hanging down badge on his neck. So it was probably a census guy at the time, and a nice fedora, nice leather brown one, and nothing anybody be wearing around here.
Yeah.
Suit and everything. Who the hell is going door to door as a census man in a suit and a long coat and a hat?
Yeah.
And he just asking me who lives here, asking me who lives out there at the property, if anybody. Yeah, I was like, oh, no one lives out there. He goes, well, there's people been out there. Yeah, people watch the animals. We have animals out there, so we always have someone out there watching them. And he's like, all right, good day. He walks off. Because he wanted to come in, and no, I live here right now. My mom, she's a cancer patient. You can't come in.
Yeah.
You cannot. Are you telling him this? And he's like, okay, well then I'll just go back and call it in. Which, fine, you know what I mean? and it just walks off. I go in, I step to the steps and turn and look, and he's gone.
Wow. Was there a car?
No, he's just walking down the road. So
walking.
Yeah, he got pretty far by standing there, though, probably. I imagine there's a few ways to turn and get behind houses.
Sure.
But just it freaked me out after all this running into that guy.
And then all of a sudden, Man in Black shows up.
I doubt that was much anything. That night could have been my mind. But after, putting all the stories together and the first one happening to me, that's all I could think of. That night was something in the tree being down. That's what people say, that they'll block roads. If you listen to anybody else's stories or read any online, on old logging roads, they like to block them off from people if there's too much traffic. That was really, those two are the stories of really the two at that age. Then after that, we worked inside. I didn't go nowhere for 10 years besides work.
Right. Yeah.
You know all about it. I used to be a colleague of yours.
Yeah.
But I am an avid morel mushroom hunter too.
Sure.
And this is where the second time I ran into Sasquatch.
Well, I don't even know if I've heard this story yet.
This one I haven't told. This is actually the guy I was with that day. Yeah, same guy, which was actually one of the guys that was out there that night, which was his 21st birthday night. Mm-hmm. He was the guy I went with that day. We have a spot in one of our conservation areas in this area that's way in the back of it. Mm-hmm. So you have to park in the picnic area, and it's probably 2 miles in the back part of it. But I mean, it's random. One year you'll walk over that hill and down into the bottoms, and you could just see them. And you go get 3-4 bags full and go home. You won't need to go anymore that year because you've already found enough. Then some years you'll go out there, be nothing.
Yeah.
One year we were finding a bunch. It was still cold, so it's probably late March. Then we're finding a bunch of the white ones, which are the small. They're probably the best ones.
Yeah, actually. I think so too.
And so we're like, okay, we found all these up front. We ain't even been in the woods 5 minutes. We already got half a bag full. Let's go all the way back to the back. We'd gotten a lot of rain that winter, so a lot of it was flooded out, and they were working on a water bird sanctuary back there. So there was still a lot of water everywhere in the woods. Mm-hmm. I get turned around. I don't know what the hell's going on, and I end up in the back by myself, no one around. I was just walking. My buddy's gone. I'm like, oh, great. I'm going to have to find my way out of here in the back by myself. So I go over to the middle part, which is a path that will connect down here, and you can turn off and go back into the main part. It's a long track that way, but it's not up and down hills. And I get to the back part where there's a creek that follows it down, and I'm just walking across, and I hear what it sounds like probably a hawk or that screeching of a bird of prey, Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, cool. That's a big hawk or big eagle out here, you know what I mean? He was close. I'm like, he's going to fly over. Nothing. Hear it again. I'm like, okay, what the hell's going on here? Nothing coming from the tree. So I'm like, oh, it's sitting up here in this tree. That's when I hear sounded like the same thing I'd heard before, but more deep of a growl than what knocks or hoots or whatever, whooping sounds. Mm-hmm. And then I just hear something crashing through the woods. So I'm like, I stop. I'm crouched down, just crashing. And then it stops. And that's when I hear the wood knocks. And I'm like, oh, great. Again? I was like, this happened the one time to a person, now it's going to happen again.
Yeah.
And it got to be, and it was still a little cold that day. We probably shouldn't have been out, but we'd been finding them. It was probably 48 degrees that day.
Sure.
And it's starting to get dark. Well, not quite dark, but late afternoon, it still gets dark at 5 or 6 o'clock at that time of the year. I didn't want to go near it because I've already been through this once. So I just dipped down in the creek, and I'm like, oh, I'll go through the creek around. Fuck it. I'll go this way. And that's when it starts following me, probably about 200-300 yards back. Every time I'd stop, when it'd start making wood knocks, it would move closer to me. Then start making more wood knocks when I'd be looking around for mushrooms, like pretending it's not there. And then finally I'd get turned around like, okay, I can't go this way. I'm not walking right into this thing because I'm going to. It's probably, I don't know, maybe 100 yards away at this point in time, pounding on a tree. Boom, 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 boom. And I'm like, oh, great. So I finally find this path over on the other side because I climb out of the creek over to the other side. I'm like, okay, this path will take me somewhere out of here. It's a path, and it has all the big electric guidelines down, the metal ones. I'm like, oh, I'll just walk the edge of this thing. That old machinery out there and trucks. Well, I get turned around, and I'm all the way on the main road, which is like 5 miles away from where we were at before. And I'm walking down the main road with just cars flying by me. Whoosh, whoosh. I'm mad at this point in time, you know.
Yeah.
And my friend was probably mad at the same time. I've been gone for 2 hours out in the woods walking around. And another person I know stops me and goes, "What are you doing walking down the road?" And I'm just like, I was like, "Oh, I got turned around mushroom hunting, man. Can you take me back over here?" He's like, yeah. And then I get there, and my friend is gone out of the vehicle, so I'm having to call him. "Where you at?" He's like, "Well, driving down the road looking for you."
So you didn't actually see it
Not
this
that time,
but you knew.
No, it stayed close enough away, and it was daytime this time.
Yeah.
So afternoon. So it was just the knocks over and over following me every time I'd stop.
Did you have that same like sense?
Yeah, and that's why I wouldn't go nowhere near it. I'd already been that close to it before. There's no way.
Yeah.
And normally, not all the stories are that like that from what you hear. There's
Sure.
some violent ones. From what I seen, it was more curious before than violent.
Mm-hmm.
But being before with the little one, I think that was more probably a female, and probably not as violent and territorial than male would be.
Sure.
Especially if you're messing around.
That's nuts, man. Yeah, I hadn't heard that story yet. That's crazy.
Yeah, that was the last one. It was just some simple wood knocks, and it's just like you remember beforehand, and you're like,
here we go, kid.
Yeah, here we go again. Then a lot of people, you gotta go into remote areas.
Yeah.
And I spend a lot of time fishing on the rivers. I wouldn't say I'm an outdoorsman by any means,
right.
But I like nature itself, and I like to be out there when in the warmer months, because you know how winters are pretty harsh around here sometimes.
Yeah.
And there's no need to going outside when it's negative 20 degrees out.
No, you don't need to do that. Wind chill cut a person down, man.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So this is what, probably as the crow flies, 35 miles or so away, separate from.
Mm-hmm.
So probably we're talking about a separate creature, not the same one that you encountered before.
No, couldn't be.
I mean, it's unlikely.
Nope. And I've looked online for everybody does to see if any. There's a few reports from up around there, and then there's a few down there from where I'm at too.
Yeah.
Where I was at, there was a few of those.
Yeah, and after I had heard another story, I think it was somebody else's story, but you had told me about the deer camp and the trash can.
Where they turned on the front porch lights and digging in the garbage cans. She started screaming for her husband. And everybody was drunk before deer season, night before deer season.
Yeah, because it was kind of close to the same area as your first story.
Right over the river.
Yeah.
Probably less than 5 miles.
Yeah. I looked it up then, and I think there were 2 reports in that area. One of them, I think you had said that one was half black, half white.
Yep.
Well, there was a report from closer to the area where you camped and had that story. A woman was down there with her kids, and they were swimming.
Okay.
And it was half brown and half white.
Yeah. See, that story with the dog, and that one I do know, because that one is my mom.
Oh.
Yes.
That's your mom's story?
She talked to the BFRO guy.
Wow. Okay.
Yes, on the phone. And that was...
So were you one of the kids?
No, that was my youngest sister.
Oh, okay.
I'm 10 years older than my younger sister.
Right.
And we had a Rottweiler at the time, big one, and sweetheart, but I mean, he'd be mean if he had to be. And then my mom's boyfriend at the time, they were down the same river, probably 5 miles, well, less than 5. Well, as the river winds, it would be probably 5 miles.
Sure.
And they're on the sandbar way out in the middle of nowhere down there. And that's the story. They're down there, dog flips out, goes up to the bank, running back and forth, just up and down it. And she said when she walked up there to see what it was, that it ducked under a tree and took off into the woods.
Wow.
And she got up to the branch, and she said the branch was probably 8 feet in the air. If it had to duck that low, it had to be big.
That's nuts. I had no idea that was your
Yeah.
mom's story.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I don't tell that either, because it's like, oh man, that's your mom's. I was like, yeah.
So at the time, whenever that happened, did she tell you about it?
Oh yeah, she was telling everybody.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, immediate family and whatnot.
Sure, yeah,
yes.
Wow. And I don't remember what the other one was, but it was close to that area too. I'll have to look that up and see.
The one of the black and the white one? Yeah, I'd heard about the guy that'd seen it, and it was the same area back there. The old roads I was telling you about off the fields that ran along the side of the river, same place.
It's a pretty remote location, really.
Yes.
I mean, there is a road, a country road that goes through there. It has a lot of traffic, but other than that, there's a handful of people that live scattered out around in there, but it's mostly
river people mostly.
Yeah, it's mostly farmland and woods, around the river. It's pretty secluded, especially if you get, a mile or two into the woods there, Yeah,
there's not a lot of traffic back to this old spot on the river.
Yeah, no.
Oh, I mean, it does connect a few of the main highways, but they're, other than that, 70 and whatnot, no.
Yeah.
And that's still way north.
Yeah. Ways north.
Yep.
Yeah. We live in a pretty small town type of atmosphere in our little part of East Central Illinois for sure. Yeah, so before we get into some of like the Native American history stuff around here, do you have any other like stories from the bazaar that you've encountered?
I'm trying to think. Those like not really. I mean, I have secondhand ones, and it's really not my place to tell secondhand ones, just in case I get any of the information wrong.
Yeah, I understand.
And then it makes me look like a fool telling someone else's story in half of exaggerated.
Right, you've heard, third hand, second hand.
Yep, told by somebody else 3 different times.
Yeah.
Told down the line.
I've been, several times throughout my show, I've mentioned how nothing really happens around here, and then I realize that a lot actually does. It's just people don't talk about it.
No, they don't talk about it here.
And that's a perfect example. Now I know for sure that there are multiple places where people see Bigfoot here, and you don't ever hear about our area on the Bigfoot shows.
No, you hear
the
Shawnee,
paranormal shows.
Anything.
Yeah. Well, I have a book right over here, like the Big Muddy Monster.
Oh yeah, Big Muddy. Yeah. Yes.
That's southwest Shawnee.
Yep.
And we'll get into that someday on the show, I'm sure. I picked that up down at the Garden of the Gods outpost that they have set up there. Little hot dog and ice cream stand in the middle of nowhere with a actual working phone booth.
I would like to go down and check out Snake Road one time in the spawning. I hear it's quite the sight.
I've been there. I want to say I was maybe 4 or 5 or something like that, and I don't remember much. I do remember only seeing like one snake going across the road, but I'm wanting to say my grandpa was driving, and maybe I'm just dreaming this or something, and he's terrified of snakes. So I remember he ran over it and backed up and ran over it again to make sure. But maybe that didn't even happen. But maybe I just know that story about the place,
a lot
a sea of snakes.
Poisonous snakes down there.
We're seeing a lot of even rattlesnakes coming into southern Illinois area.
One time here that I'd ever seen one, it was small.
Yeah. I know definitely in Shawnee there's a lot of reports. The police officer
here in town didn't believe us, and when he showed up, we cut it in half with the shovel.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
It was a little, probably timber rattler or whatever the other one's called. Because I'm pretty sure there's another one too, and it has a Native American name that I'm not sure I can pronounce.
And you do a pretty good job pronouncing some of the Native American names, man.
Yes.
But that's because you have a lot of Native American heritage.
It's not real. I wouldn't say a lot. One of the lines I come down through. That's what is always the stories, you would think. You're told all the stories all through your life.
Yeah.
I've descended from a few of them, from what it says, mixed people, the French, New France. And I never knew that till the internet. I didn't mind looking. I never thought about looking until now the Ancestry, everybody does it. And then my mom did hers, so it was on the other side, a couple of people had it in the tree. And I'd always wanted to contact them and see there in Indiana and see how exactly our family does go through it, because it goes through Vincent's. My grandpa is a descendant of my great-grandpa would be a descendant of the French soldiers in Vincennes before the Americans came and took Vincennes. And then they moved, because I guess they didn't like the Americans, and they moved across the river and built St. Francisville.
Right.
which would be their which I'm pretty sure some people still speak French there today.
Really?
Yes.
That's interesting.
There's a book, would it be their tricentennial? St. Francisville Tricentennial? You have to look that up.
I'll have to look that up.
Google Books is amazing.
It is.
That's where I found the book of the stories about old Vincent and the French. With some of them were Wendigo, and it's translated, and you can tell that it was a Frenchman because some of it is poorly translated.
Sure.
Old English with "yer" on Y-E-R in the book. But he talked about what they call it. What in New Orleans they call it Rougarou.
Yeah,
Would be what, Dogman, pretty much?
Yeah.
Well, they call it Lougarou.
With an L.
Yes, kind of like loopy or lupus and lupin, whatever it goes back to for French, to Latin, whatever they originally came from.
That makes sense now.
The old French stories of the Alps and whatnot from back in the day, I imagine that's where it came from.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Stories.
The reason that we even got into talking about the French and Native American history, like sort of near our area. I mean, we're, a little ways away from it, but it's driving distance, was because I had mentioned to you about Lucky Point, which was brought up on my show last October. I started looking into that, and there were, I was surprised to find some like Native American stories about that area. And we started talking a couple months ago, and yeah, you blew my mind with some of this stuff, and there was other things that were connected to my personal research that I hadn't been able to explore yet. And you filled in some weird pieces in our area. I don't want to tell everybody where we are. There's a little town. We'll call it Level Pebble, and no one will know, but it makes total sense if you do know. So
its ancestors were some of the original people that created this town.
Yeah. That's nuts. And I was talking about the Knights of the Golden Circle with you.
Oh, yes, where I got the same thing as you when I was looking up, and we talked about Aleister Crowley, and I was talking about going and looking for the same books and going through the same wormhole you did, and going on there, and well, they were white supremacists.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And I went to the websites myself, and when I got in there, I knew I would get out of there real quick.
Yeah,
and then you explained to me your story, what happened with it, and I was just like, oh, man.
Yeah.
Don't want to dig too deep.
No. I had heard, and this is something I remembered after we had talked, and I haven't got a chance to tell you this or not before. My mom was married to this guy for a while, and he told me this story about whenever he was like 16 or 17, and he was out country cruising in around that area, and he came down this old country road, and there was this fire off to the distance, and like off of an oil road, and he thought maybe there was like an oil rig that was on fire, or a pump, and so he went out that way to make sure that it wasn't something bad going on. And when he got out there and got close enough, he saw there was people around this fire in these robes. They noticed him and started chasing after him. As he was turning around, they were getting closer, and he finally got turned around. He said one of them slapped the tailgate of his truck. Like, they were right on him, and he got away. And I was trying to think, obviously we have some pretty terrible people like here, like racist people that are here.
At that point in time, that would have been after the war, 1812, when they first started populating the area, really. The government was signing over land to the soldiers that fought in the war, and they were trying to move the Indians out west to the reservations. That would so that would have been right after 1812.
Yeah.
When the main after the main two chiefs in Indiana, pretty much the ones that were they died in the early 1800s, right after the war.
Yeah.
So they could just swindle the rest of them out, because the two that they were loyal to were gone, so they didn't have to be loyal to anybody else anymore.
Right.
They wanted more land, feed the greed.
Yeah, so then decades later, we enter into the Civil War, and we're near kind of this north-south area.
I had family members on both sides.
Right.
Yes.
And that's when the Knights of the Golden Circle is formed.
Yes, they were offshoot of rattlesnakes.
Yeah, and I didn't know this until we talked.
and everybody, most people of your history buff, you know who the rattlesnakes were.
Sure.
They were the predecessors to any of it, really.
Right.
And then I started looking into them, too, about the Alamo, and that all leads to the Alamo, too, with them trying to take over Texas and create their own country out of Texas.
Right, and it was supposed to be, like, all the way up to, like, St. Louis.
Yes.
To the north, and then basically everything that was already Confederate. But you had mentioned a story during the Civil War about people over near Level Pebble, I thought, that were like housing like rebels to attack somebody at Vincent's, right?
This is in one of our history books. It's on the internet website for our county.
Okay.
And it's in one of the books, but it was a preacher out in the country out there. They all assembled at the church and were making their plan where they were going to go and kill the Union soldiers that were in town. And because they were Southern sympathizers. So they were going to go kill I don't know if they were going to kill them, drive them out, or what was going on with it. Well, the preacher at the time had caught wind of them out there and hid underneath the floorboards inside the church until they all gone. Then went into town of Level Pebble and raised a stink to everybody in town, telling everybody what they were going to do. Big crowd was out there, symbol, and all the moms of the soldiers and whatnot were out there in town. I don't know exactly I don't know if somebody was shot, but I know a shot was fired, and that's when it all dispersed.
Okay, so there is a clear parallel to the Knights of the Golden Circle possibly being, or those people possibly being in that group.
Yes, possibly could have been. Yes.
Because I know for a fact that they were as far north in Illinois as Shawnee.
Yes.
Because I didn't know this until a couple weeks ago. There was
they were Knights of the Golden Dawn, I'm pretty sure.
The Golden Circle.
Or Golden Circle, yes.
Golden Dawn's a total different magical order thing.
Yeah, I know. I get it mixed up. I read too much stuff.
I know the feeling. But there is a monument, or it's like a part of the Shawnee Forest that is an old meeting place from the Knights of the Golden Circle. And I didn't know this. I was talking at work with someone, and they had mentioned somebody had been recently engaged, and they had put pictures up of a trip where the proposal happened, and they had tagged it was Knights of the Golden Circle something. I'll have to look it up again, but it's in Shawnee. And Southern Illinois, it's my jam. I know a lot of stuff, but I didn't know that. And I was like, this is nuts, because just an hour and a half away across the river, I talked to a guy that had run-in with modern day Knights of the Golden Circle.
I'm pretty sure the website I went to when I was looking for the Crowley books was, it was Southern Indiana, and it said it right on there. They didn't care. They don't care.
So it's possible that this Knights of the Golden Circle was around in the late 80s, early 90s here in the vicinity of Level Pebble. And there's a lot of evidence that they were actually not just terrible white supremacists, but that they were also digging into the occult a little bit. And that's something that I had formulated an idea about after I had heard that. They had supposedly buried gold, like gold stashes all over Kentucky. Like they'd commandeer all this gold, they would accumulate all this gold, and they would hide it, which is, part of the Jesse James story ties into that, because he was huge into the Golden Circle.
My grandpa told me a story. You have family stories. This is probably not real, but like I said, this town, my family was some of the people that were originals that lived there. It was named after them originally before it was changed into this other name. My grandpa always told me a story that Jesse James come up here and tried to hide out, and they told him to hit the road or they were going to kill him.
It's possible that that's really true, especially now that we're putting all these pieces together.
That was a story that Jesse James was friends with one of them, that he'd fought in the war with one of them, and he come up here trying to hide out, and they told him to hit the road or they're going to blast him, I guess.
But going back, the theory that I had come up with, and I may be totally off base. We have these people that are hiding gold that are also into the occult. A lot of these areas, including the Big Muddy Monster area, where we know they're meeting, what if they're using some sort of ancient occult magic that they have learned to guard these gold stashes with paranormal things like Bigfoot sightings or dogmen sightings? We get into Kentucky. This guy that I had talked to in Smithland, that's just north of Land Between the Lakes, where there's dogman encounters. And I'm supposed to be interviewing one of the guys about that. So what if you could pinpoint, if we could collectively get a map of all these sightings in this area, I wonder if you could find gold stashes just based off of the paranormal reports.
Cave?
I don't know, but it's possible. I mean,
well, that book I was talking about Vincent's, it had one of the stories about an island that's in the river just south of there that supposedly the Spanish had buried a bunch of gold on too.
Is the island still visible?
I'm not sure. I have no idea. I'm not river folk, so I would not really know.
Yeah, we're country folk, not river folk. Although, there's a lot of river folk around here.
Yes.
We could probably find out pretty easily.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's so much with the history of the French and the Native Americans.
Yeah, fur trade. Yeah, they mixed. They mixed together to keep to make it to where they could travel free, or the white man could travel free if he had a wife and kids. That's what it was.
Yeah,
and it was mostly, looking at history, it's mostly the higher up Indians that did it.
Yeah,
their sister or their daughter would marry one of the fur traders. So no one could really say anything about it because they're not going to go against his word at the time. Right, yeah.
There's protection on both sides.
They had a democracy going on. It's just like the original one. Like the females voted on the who became chief. It wasn't they voted who was the best male to become chief at the time. It's known in multiple Native American cultures.
Yeah. It's so interesting, man. And the more I get into it, the more I find these connections between, especially Bigfoot and Native American history.
Wendigo, too. Like, that's the big one, is Wendigo.
I need to look more deeper into that.
Yeah.
We probably need to talk about that sometime, for sure.
Yeah, I was going to get some notes together about a lot of things. I didn't want to draw it out to 3 hour long.
Yeah, right.
Rambling for 3 hours.
Yeah, I've had a few of those where I've had to really cut them down. But yeah, this has been good, man. And I think there's probably more to talk about in the future, I think.
Yeah, we can do a second episode.
For
I
sure.
don't live too far away from you. I'm not doing anything.
I know where to find you, creeping around the river, eating Bigfoot Doritos.
Yeah.
So I think, we'll probably just wrap this one up right now. Yeah, definitely plan on having you on again, because I know there's a lot. I don't have many connections to like the local history, and you seem to know an awful lot about it because you read all these crazy books about it that I don't even know exist.
Yeah, I just look it up and it comes up,
So definitely, even if it's not for the show, we definitely need to have like a research night.
I want to go to the Historical Society. I want to talk to some of them guys one of them days at the museum.
Yeah.
See what they have to say.
Yeah, we should go do that.
We should, actually.
For sure.
They always have events going on in their group on their Facebook page. Yeah. So
there's actually an event coming up with the Archaeological Society here too that's going to be just across the road.
Oh, okay. We might have to check that out.
And it's the guy who's putting it on is he's like a resident archaeologist at Cahokia.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it'd be really interesting to go talk to him. So there's not going to be very many people there.
No.
Because no one around here is into that stuff.
I don't give a crap about Cahokia.
Yeah.
Well, so, they will when the flood comes.
I think it might be. I think it might be next Saturday. Actually, I'll look it up.
We'll have to go to it.
But anyway, we'll go ahead and wrap this up, man. This has been a great time. I love your Bigfoot story so much. I had to have it.
I know,
recorded.
And I didn't want to type it out and send it to someone on YouTube. One of them people. No, I'd rather have it on here, and I'm glad I finally got on. You've been bugging me.
I've been bugging you for a year.
A year, yeah. And I'm just nervous, and don't want people knowing. The people around here are going to know just because of my voice. They're going to know who I am. But
I have a lot more listeners from around the world than I do from here, so you're safe. And we will never say your last name.
Yeah.
I won't even tell my Patreon members what your last name is.
Well, you can tell your Patreon name because it's a unique last name. You know that. And it is. You've probably never met anyone else in the world.
Just your family.
Nope. And it goes from English all the way back to Normandy. So
really?
Yeah, to Rollo apparently, supposedly. But you know how that is. Yeah, everybody's related to Rollo and Genghis Khan.
Yeah, right. Conquerors.
Yeah. Well, Rollo, I guess he did. Well, it wasn't him himself.
No,
he was gave in Normandy pretty much. So they didn't conquer him, but it was his grandson or great-grandson, William. Right. We can get into that, too, one day.
Sure,
all of it.
Absolutely.
All history. That's my favorite thing, really.
That's awesome. I'm getting to a point where I can only chase down so many leads, you know, and I'm booked so solid with doing this show.
I'm glad I came on, man. I'm glad you brought me on.
So good to have you on.
People can listen to that story and call me a liar, bullshitter me, whatever they want.
Yeah, they can. You know, even if they don't believe that it's true, they'll at least find it entertaining.
Yeah, they will. They'll laugh.
For sure.
That's the best part about it, because every time I laugh when I tell it.
It's so good. I've never heard anything like that. Baby Bigfoot stealing Doritos and hot dog
Touching
buns.
toes with Bigfoot. That's what my brother said.
Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, thanks again for coming on, man. We'll wrap this up, and I will see everybody on the next one.
Until next time, keep the fire going.